Good evening, and thank you for being here. Whether you're a member of our imaginary monastery, e.g. someone subscribed and or who comments, or if you're just dropping in, you are most welcome at our daily devotional readings. We are reading through all of Plato in 1 year, all of the undisputed dialogues of Plato, and we're currently in Phaedo. So let's proceed. Take a deep breath. I need a deep breath. It was a long day. Take a deep breath. Open your heart and your mind. And let's listen to Plato. Yet once more consider the matter in this light. When the soul and the body are united, then nature orders the soul to rule and govern, and the body to obey and serve. Now, which of these two functions is akin to the divine, and which to the mortal? Does not the divine appear to you to be that which naturally orders and rules, and the mortal that which is subject and servant? True. And which does the soul resemble? The soul resembles the divine and the body the mortal. There can be no doubt of that, Socrates. Then reflect, Sebes, is not the conclusion of the whole matter this, that the soul is in the very likeness of the divine, and immortal, and intelligible, and uniform, and indissoluble, and unchangeable, and the body is the very likeness of the human, and mortal, and unintelligible, and multiform, and dissoluble, and changeable. Can this, my dear Sebes, be denied? No, indeed. But if this is true, then is not the body liable to speedy dissolution, and is not the soul almost or altogether indissoluble? Certainly. And do you further observe that after a man is dead, the body, which is the visible part of man, and as a visible framework, which is called a corpse, and which would naturally be dissolved and decomposed and dissipated, is not dissolved or decomposed at once, but may remain for a good while, if the constitution be sound at the time of death, and the season of the year favourable. For the body, when shrunk and embulbed, as is the custom in Egypt, may remain almost entire through infinite ages, and even in decay, so there are some portions, such as the bones and ligaments, which are practically indestructible. You allow that? Yes. And are we to suppose that the soul, which is invisible, in passing to the true Hades, which like her is invisible and pure and noble, and on her way to the good and wise God, whither, if God will, my soul is also soon to go, that the soul, I repeat, if this be her nature and origin, is blown away and perishes immediately on quitting the body, as the many say? That can never be, dear Simmias and Sebes. The truth rather is that the soul, which is pure at departing, draws after her no bodily taint, having never voluntarily had connections with the body, which she is ever avoiding, herself gathered into herself, for such abstraction has been the study of her life. And what does this mean, but that she has has been a true disciple of philosophy, and has practiced how to die easily. And is not philosophy the practice of death? Certainly. That soul, I say, herself invisible, departs to the invisible world, to the divine and immortal, and rational, thither arriving, hither, probably. She lives in bliss and is released from the error and folly of men, their fears and wild passions, and all other human ills, and forever dwells, as they say of the initiated, in the company of the gods. Is this not true, Sebes? Yes, said Sebes, beyond a doubt. But the soul which has been polluted, and is impure at the time of her departure, and is the companion and servant of the body always, and is in love with and fascinated by the body, and by the desires and pleasures of the body, until she is led to believe that the truth only exists in a bodily form, which a man may touch and see and taste, and use for the purposes of his lusts. The soul, I mean, accustomed to hate and fear and avoid the intellectual principle, which to the bodily eye is dark and invisible, and can be attained only by philosophy. Do you suppose that such a soul as this will depart, pure and unalloyed? That is impossible, he replied. She is engrossed by the corporal, which the continual association and constant care of the body have made natural to her. Very true. And this, my friend, may be conceived to be that heavy, weighty, earthly element of sight by which such a soul is depressed and dragged down again into the visible world, because she is afraid of the invisible and of the world below, prowling about tombs and sepulchres, in the neighborhood of which, as they tell us, are seen certainly ghostly apparitions of souls which have not departed pure, but are cloyed with sight and therefore visible. That is very likely, Socrates. Yes, that is very likely, Sebes, and these must be the souls not of the good but of the evil, who are compelled to wander about such places in payment of the penalty of their former evil ways of life. And they continue to wander until the desire which haunts them is satisfied, and they are imprisoned in another body. And they may be supposed to be fixed in the same natures which they had in their former life. What natures do you mean, Socrates? I mean to say that men who have followed her gluttony and wantonness and drunkenness, and have had no thought of avoiding them, would pass into asses and animals of that sort. What do you think? I think that exceedingly probable. And those who have chosen the portion of injustice and tyranny and violence will pass into wolves, or in hawks and kites, whither else can be supposed them to go. Yes, said Sebes, that is doubtless the place of natures such as theirs. And there is no difficulty, he said, in assigning to all of them places answering to their several natures and propensities. There is not, he said. Even among them, some are happier than others, and the happiest both in themselves and their place of abode are those who have practiced the civil and social virtues which are called temperance and justice, and are acquired by habit and attention without philosophy and mind. Why are they the happiest? Because they may be expected to pass into some gentle social nature which is like their own, such as that of bees or ants, or even back again into the form of man. And just and moderate men spring from them. That is not impossible. But he who is a philosopher or a lover of learning and is entirely pure at departing is alone permitted to reach the gods. And this is the reason, Simmias and Sebes, why the true votaries of philosophy abstain from all fleshly lusts, and endure and refuse to give themselves up to them. Not because they fear poverty or the ruin of their families, like the lovers of money and the world in general, nor like the lovers of power and honor, because they dread the dishonor or disgrace of evil deeds. No, Socrates, that would not become them, said Sebes. No, indeed, he replied, and therefore they who have a care of their souls, and do not merely live in the fashions of the body, say farewell to all this. They will not walk in the ways of the blind, and when philosophy offers them purification and release from evil, they feel that they ought not to resist her influence, and to her they incline, and whither she leads, they will follow. What do you mean, Socrates? I will tell you, he said. The lovers of knowledge are conscious that their souls, when philosophy receives them, are simply fastened and glued to their bodies. The soul is only able to view existence through the bars of the prison, and not in her own nature. She is wallowing in the mire of all ignorance, and philosophy, seeing the terrible nature of her confinement, and that the captive through desire is led to conspire in her own captivity. For the lovers of knowledge are aware that this was the original state of the soul, and that when she was in this state, philosophy received and gently counseled her, and wanted to release her, pointing out to her that the eye is full of deceit, and also the ear and the other senses, and persuading her to retire from them in all but the necessary use of them, and to be gathered up and collected into herself, and to trust only to herself and her own intuitions of absolute existence, and mistrust that which comes to her through others and is suspect to vicissitude. Philosophy shows her that this is visible and tangible, but that what she sees in her own nature is intellectual and invisible. And the soul of the true philosopher thinks that she ought not to resist this deliverance, and therefore abstains from pleasures and desires, and pains and fears, as far as she is able, reflecting that when a man has great joys or sorrows or fears or desires, he suffers from them, not the sort of evil which might be anticipated, as, for example, the loss of his health or poverty, which he has sacrificed to his lusts. But he has suffered an evil greater far, which is the greatest and worst of all evils, and one of which he never thinks. And what is that, Socrates? Said Cebes. Why, this. When the feeling of pleasure or pain in the soul is most intense, all of us naturally suppose that the object of this intense feeling is then plainest and truest. But this is not the case. Very true. And this is the state in which the soul is most enthralled by the body. How is that? Why, because each pleasure and pain is a sort of nail which nails and rivets the soul to the body and engrosses her, and make her believe that to be true which the body affirms to be true. And from agreeing with the body and having the same delight, she is obliged to have the same habits and ways, and is not likely ever to be pure at her departure to the world below, but is always saturated with the body, so that she soon sinks into another body and there germinates and grows, and has therefore no part in the communion of the divine and pure and simple. That is most true, Socrates, answered Cebes. And this, Cebes, is the reason why the true lovers of knowledge are temperate and brave, and not for the reason which the world gives. Certainly not. Certainly not. For not in that way does the soul of the philosopher reason. She will not ask philosophy to release her in order that when released she may deliver herself up again to the thraldom of pleasures and pains, doing a work only to be undone again, weaving instead of unweaving her Penelope's whip. But she will make herself a calm of passion and follow reason, and dwell in her, beholding the true and divine, which is not matter of opinion, and thence derive nourishment. Thus she seeks to live while she lives, and after death she hopes to go to her own kindred, and to be freed from human ills. Never fear, Simmias and Cebes, that a soul which has been thus nurtured and has had these pursuits will at her departure from the body be scattered and blown away by the winds, and be nowhere and nothing. When Socrates had done speaking for a considerable time, there was silence. He himself and most of us appeared to be meditating on what had been said. Only Cebes and Simmias spoke a few words to one another. And Socrates, observing this, asked them what they thought of the argument, and whether there was anything wanting. For, said he, much is still open to suspicion and attack, if anyone here were disposed to sift the matter thoroughly. If you are talking of something else, I would rather not interrupt you, but if you are still doubtful about the argument, do not hesitate to say exactly what you think, and let us have anything better which you can suggest. And if I am likely to be of any use, allow me to help you. Simmias said, I must confess, Socrates, that doubts did arise in our minds, and each of us was urging and inciting the other to put the question which he wanted to have answered, and which neither of us liked to ask, fearing that our importunity might be troublesome under the present circumstances. Socrates smiled and said, O Simmias, how strange that is! I am not very likely to persuade other men that I do not regard my present situation as a misfortune, if I am unable to persuade you, and you will keep fancying that I am at all more troubled now than at any other time. Will you not allow that I have as much of the spirit of prophecy in me as the swans? For they, when they perceive that they must die, having sung all their life long, do then sing more than ever, rejoicing in the thought that they are about to go away to the God whose ministers they are. But men, because they are themselves afraid of death, slanderously affirm of the swans that they sing a lament at the last, not considering that no bird sings when cold or hungry or in pain, not even the nightingale nor the swallow, nor yet the hoopoe, which are said indeed to tune a lay of sorrow, although I do not believe this to be true of them any more than of swans. But because they are sacred to Apollo, and have the gift of prophecy and anticipate the good things of another world, therefore they sing and rejoice in that day more than they ever did before. And I, too, believing myself to be the consecrated servant of the same God, and the fellow servant of the swans, and thinking that I have received from my master gifts of prophecy which are not inferior to theirs, would not go out of life less merrily than the swans. Cease to mind then about this, but speak and ask anything which you like, while the 11 magistrates of Athens allow. Thus far our scripture of the evening. So here it is explicitly stated that Apollo is indeed Socrates' God, the one he is most consecrated to, if not solely. He often refers to making offerings to other gods as well, so I would say most. I'm a bit late tonight because I went out, amongst others, drinking. Not a lot. It was a fancy restaurant, so it was a 4-course meal with aperitif and wine during the meal, just one, and limoncello afterwards. And I've also been up until 3, and it's now 10:30 almost in my time. So the body is in strange places. And yet, or maybe even because of that, I find it so difficult to not cringe when Socrates says these things. Not because, oh, modern science disproved the existence of such things, but because of the damage that I feel it has caused humanity, me not least. This idea that a dispassionate existence is the best, noblest way to live. One should always be careful of turning Plato upside down. We know it has been done before with detrimental consequences. But if the body and soul is one, Do we not best serve the soul by serving the body? Is philosophy the practice of death? It is a very common thing to say, and I have said it myself, not least because I've experienced an initiation that felt like a death experience. And since that, I've been looking forward to death. I'm also very fond of life, so you don't have to worry about me. But to me, death is silence and darkness. And I love silence and darkness. And maybe, as I think Socrates is just singing hymns, singing lullabies to himself and those around him, to calm the fear of the dark, the unknown. Maybe that's just my way of calming my fear. Most likely. The question is not so much, think least of death. I think it's a quote from Spinoza. It is a book about Spinoza. The question is not what happens after we die. Our concern here is what happens while we're alive. Who is the wise here and now? I have a friend, a woman I love dearly, and because I'm a bit intoxicated, I might start crying speaking about her. I haven't seen her for a very long time. Who would not mind coming back as a wolf, I'm sure. And she's one of the most embodied, most in tune with her land, earth, human beings I know. Isn't she the wise person? Just practically, if you think of wise people, it's not those people who live in towers, like I do. I live in a tower. With only book knowledge. Cold and calculated. It's the people with compassion and understanding and warmth, and who've seen things and who are open to see and share things. You don't get that from disassociating your body and your soul. What is wisdom? I don't know. But as her consecrated servant, I do try my best to follow her wherever she leads. I know I have a long way to go. but it feels like becoming truly embodied is in the right direction. Thank you for playing with me tonight. I hope to meet you again. And may our imaginary monastery become a real source of support in our endeavor to follow wisdom and in search of our individual and collective truth. May the spirit of Sophia be with you.